Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Our topic today is shamanic physics, and with me in the studio is Dr. Fred Alan Wolf, physicist, shaman, and author of 6 books, including Space, Time, and Beyond, Taking the Quantum Leap, which won the American Book Award in Science, Parallel Universes, The Body Quantum, and most recently, The Eagle's Quest. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It's a pleasure to be here again.
It's a pleasure to be with you and to reflect on all the many years I've known you and the adventures that you have been involved in. Your exploration into the world of mysticism and shamanism began well over 20 years ago, I think, when you first started studying Kabbalah in Paris.
That's true. That's true. That was the beginning of all this new stuff and this kind of crazy, I don't know if we should call it crazy these days, because everything we were working on, I was working on in the early 70s, seems to now be coming true. We were predicting all kinds of things in like Space, Time, and Beyond about, for example, the physics of time travel. And right now, there are papers coming out in the Physical Review, which is a top echelon journal, about how to build a time machine today. So it's really, in a sense, a new age, and we're beginning something very exciting in the 20th century.
Well, it's interesting to me that you, a classically trained physicist, a former professor of physics at San Diego State University, has come around full circle, in a sense, to embrace the world, the ancient worldview of shamanism.
Yes, it is a kind of a surprise in a way. Shamanism, or shamanism, there's a lot of different ways of pronouncing it, is something which can be dated, I think, fairly accurately to about a period of 30,000 years. And here we are in the field of new physics, quantum physics, and finding some very similar truths, things that the shamans observed about the nature of reality, seem to be things that we as physicists are also beginning to observe about reality. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a rather exciting time, and I'm really pleased to have been able to participate in this kind of world, and looking forward to more adventures in it.
Yeah. I mentioned a moment ago, and I'd like just to define for our viewers, Kabbalah.
Yes.
Since that was one of your introductions to the world of magic, could you define it and talk about it a little bit?
Sure. Kabbalah is actually a Hebrew word, and it means to receive. So if you happen to be, say, in Israel and you want to get a receipt for a meal, you say, Kabbalah bavakasha, which means, may I have my receipt. Mm. So Kabbalah is the act of receiving, and it's a very ancient mystical form, spiritual form, that originally began with the study of sacred texts in the original Hebrew language. The Kabbalists believed, for example, that there were sacred sounds, and that if you pronounced these sounds, you could evoke altered states of consciousness, which, by the way, is very parallel to things that are also true in the shamanic world.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the other principles of the Kabbalah is that each letter of every word has its own meaning, and if you understand the meanings of the letters, you get into the deeper meanings of each word.
Exactly, exactly. There are, each letter has its own meaning, but each letter, being a word, can be spelled in terms of other letters. So it's a constant, it's a generation of infinity, because, for example, if you spell like Aleph, it's spelled Aleph Lamed Fe with 3 letters, but then Lamed is spelled Lamed Mem Dalet, and then Dalet is spelled Dalet Lamed Tav, and it's on and on and on and on and on. And if you look at the meaning of each letter, you can get a sort of a larger, expanded meaning of what each letter, of what each single letter stands for in terms of the whole. So it's almost holographic. The part contains the whole, literally, in these actual sounds.
And as I understand it, when you look at, for example, in the book of Genesis, the story of creation, and read it from this Kabbalistic perspective, you get a vision of the creation that's not so different than the one you might find in physics.
Basically, that's true. The Kabbalists have a symbol for creation. It's Beit, the second letter of the Hebrew Aleph Beit. Alphabet comes from Aleph Beit, obviously, and it means several meanings, which are all related. It means a container. It also means a house. That's where temples are called Beit or Beth something. That Beth is another pronunciation of Beit. But it also means in the Tarot system, it means the magician. that which creates. So it has a creative element in it, but the secret of creation is containment. So in order to create something, you have to contain something from something else. You have to make a distinction. I think G. Spencer Brown wrote about the first distinction. So in a way, Kabbalah is indicating how things are created from nothing.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the principles that you have developed linking your background in physics, your work as a physicist, with the work of mystics and shamans is that all of you are concerned with vibration.
Yes. Yes, right.
Like the sound of these words of power are vibrations.
Yes, in fact, the idea of vibration as being a major facet to not only the ancient Kabbalists' view, but also the shamanic view, was something I discovered and then discovered again. My teacher, Carlos Suarez, in Paris, when I was living in Paris, had taught me about this, and that was back in 1974, and then it rekindled in 1989 after spending time with the Peruvian shamans. I remember the first time I met Jorge Gonzalez Ramirez, who is a Peruvian shaman, and I asked him simple questions like, well, how do you heal somebody? And then I said, well, before you answer that question, I said, how do you know when someone's sick? And he says, oh, I can tell by their vibration. I said, oh, their vibration. Well, how do you do that? And so then he reaches over, and just like I'm reaching over, he grabs my wrist, and he starts holding my wrist like this. And then I said, oh, and I'm thinking, this guy's, maybe primitive. And you mean pulse? That's what you mean. You mean pulse. And then he says, that too. And then I realized that when he's speaking about vibrations or bodily vibrations, he's not just speaking about the pulse, but he's speaking about a number of different vibrational energies that are present in the body. Well, after I talked with him and then had an experience with him in which I directly felt his vibration in a shamanic trance state that I entered with him, I then had talked, even before and afterwards, I talked with a number of other shamans in different parts of the world. Anglo-Saxon shamans, Druids. I talked with shamans from different Indian tribes, the Chumash Indians down in Ventura, California, also the Oglala Sioux in South Dakota. And they all keyed me into the idea that vibration was extremely important in their worldview. So when I wrote the book, The Eagle's Quest, I decided that in order for me as a physicist to make sense out of all of this, I'm really going to have to approach it from as much of a scientific viewpoint as I can. So I made up a series of postulates or hypotheses. And the first hypothesis, the major one, is that the shamans see the universe as made of primal vibrational stuff. And that really tied into my understanding of quantum physics, because in quantum physics we talk about quantum waves, which are vibrations, out of which all matter is eventually is created or emerges. Yeah. So there was a direct tie-in right there.
And these quantum waves, as I understand them, are non-physical in the sense that they are probability waves.
Exactly right. And it's very similar to the shamanic idea. Quantum physics is a very bizarre business. I mean, it's the business of isness, and nothing could be further from our normal sense of reality than that business. Yeah. It deals with things which are, in a sense, unobservable, out of which we feel all observable phenomena will arise or arises. And one of the basic assumptions of quantum physics is the quantum wave nature of all matter. That matter, unobserved, matter on its own, moves and vibrates in waves. But waves of what? Are they water waves? Are they sound waves? Are they electrical waves? No, they're actually waves of nothing. They're called probability waves. And probability is something that you do in your brain, in your mind. You think, you determine what's probable and what's not probable. So we're dealing with something which is akin to almost mind stuff, if you will. This is not really too much of a surprise. Physicists already had a shock to their system delivered in 1905 when Einstein pointed out that there was no ether to support waves of light. So when a light wave is waving, what is it waving in? It's also waving in nothing. So light is a kind of halfway between material and energetic reality that we see in terms of substance and almost the mind of God, if you will.
Yeah. one of your other hypotheses is that shamans work with the realm of mythos, of myths and legends. And I get a sense that this quantum probability waving around in nothingness could very well be the same stuff of myths.
In fact, I would suggest, although I imagine some scientists might find this more difficult to accept, that it is a kind of a myth. We have myths about subatomic reality. There isn't anybody alive who's ever seen a subatomic particle, that it captured one and held one in their hands, or put one in a bottle and examined it. And quantum waves are something like this. In fact, I would suggest that what scientists do is to create myths that they can substantiate through the process of mathematics and through the process of observation. But what they observe and what they believe is creating what they observe are often quite separate from each other. So in a certain sense, quantum physics is a myth that Western culture lives by.
What I think I hear you saying is that there's a process of reification going on, that the quantum physicists set up their experiments in a certain way to create these results, and then they say, this is the objective world out there.
Exactly.
And not always acknowledging their role in creating it.
Exactly. It's the original spirit of science, which I think begins almost with Sir Francis Bacon, is the notion that there is such a thing as an objective world. And probably if we look back through history, we can see the concept arising in the early Greeks, maybe with Democritus, and the notion of that there were atoms of stuff which were fundamental. And the idea of an objective reality was somehow to separate or remove the human brain or the mind from this objective reality. So somehow we had the idea that an observer observed what was already out there. But in the quantum realm, when you set up an experiment, you're not just observing what's already out there, you're participating with what's out there, and in a sense you are actually creating your experience of what's happening out there. So if you look for certain phenomena one way, you see phenomena in that way. If you look for it in another way, you see it in a contradictory guise. The so-called wave-particle duality is an example of this, or the Heisenberg principle of uncertainty, the position and momentum of an object is another example of this.
Well, would you say that the various shamans that you worked with in different cultures, each with their own mythological system, are doing something much the same?
I would say there's a very strong tie-in here. Shamans, for example, deal in a world of spirits. They deal in mythological connections between events. They're in a world that Jung would call a world of synchronicity. For example, in China, if a shaman is going to heal you, and on that particular day when the shaman is coming to you, he notices a bird flying north to south or east to west, that will affect your healing. In other words, that's a message to him about what type of healing you need to undergo. So the shamans are constantly dealing with, I would say, synchronicities and mythical elements. A bird doesn't just mean a bird, it means something having to do with flight, or it may have something to do with the dead spirit that's flown. Because of their belief structure in this, as much as our scientific belief structure in things like particles, they see the world differently. Western scientists see the world in a certain way. We have jokes about, well, don't mind him, he's just a physicist, or something like that, because physicists seem to be so quirky about trying to analyze everything and see everything in terms of separate parts. Well, this is a penchant, a way of seeing that physicists have developed as a result of their training. In a very similar way, shamans have developed a way of seeing because of their training, and their training is actually longer in time than the training of a physicist. So they indeed are able to see things or have belief structures about things which lie, I would say, outside of the realm of the Western scientist.
Now, one of the intriguing things about shamanism is the idea of the call to be a shaman. That some people are called, and in your writing you suggest that in some sense this call has affected you. You haven't just been an objective physicist looking into the world of shamanism. You actually have been kind of pulled in, even yanked in from time to time.
More or less. The way shamans heal, or the way they relate to other people, is to initiate them. So if you hang out with them enough time, you begin to learn from them, and in fact, in order for you to communicate with them at a certain level, you have to transform, you have to undergo some kind of process. So all the basic healing rituals, everything you do is an initiation procedure that the shaman himself has gone through. So I think this is very important because it helps us to understand why in some cases they're successful in healing and in other cases they're not. A lot have to do with the belief structure of the being who is undergoing the healing. And I use a model, I use a vibrational model to try to explain this. It's a model based upon pendula, you know, that's two pendulums. If you have two pendula, you know what they are. They're little bobs hanging by sticks from some support point, and they swing back and forth. Well, you can imagine that you might have two pendula of different lengths, and between the two sticks holding the bobs, there might be a very lightweight spring of some kind, so that you can virtually move one, and the spring will move, but it won't cause everything to shake up in any kind of bizarre or unsure way. And you can imagine that you might start shaking the bottom pendulum, which is long, and as you know, as maybe you know, maybe the audience knows, if pendulum have different lengths, they vibrate at different rates. Yeah. The short pendulum vibrates actually faster than the longer pendulum. So if you start the long one going and you try to see what happens, well, the long one starts to go and the spring starts to expand and contract, and it should start the short one going, but the short one has a different rate that it wants to go at. So consequently, they're out of rhythm, they're out of sync, they're out of vibrational resonance with each other, and so very little energy gets transferred. All the little one does is just shake around a little bit, but it doesn't really gain any energy. But if they're both the same length, and you start this one going, and then what starts to happen is that this one starts to, the one on the right starts to slow down, and the one on the left starts to speed up, and energy gets transferred from one to the other and then back again. So there's a real resonance or a vibrational transfer. So I said that this is maybe, this resembles in some way, the way shamans actually heal. When I come into the shamanic world, I'm not at the same length as they are. They have a certain vibration. And what they want to do with me is initiate me so that I can become resonant with them. And at that point, then whatever illness I have can be transferred over to them. Now, what's interesting about them is they're able to get rid of illness. They can shake it off, or they get rid of it in their normal bodily functions. Yeah. And I think this is an important insight into how they actually heal.
In other words, they resonate with you, take on your illness, and then because they know how to heal themselves,
that's right,
they can get rid of it. They can handle your illness better than you can.
That's right. That's basically what they do. Don Salone, a very powerful shaman that I met in Peru, who is 70 years old, a maestral shaman, would heal in ways that were almost unfathomable to me. One way of healing, or of just getting my vibration to change, would be to make me get sicker. He would blow this very obnoxious tobacco smoke all over me, and then I would throw up or sweat or something. And as a result of that, I would be getting rid of whatever particular illness that was bothering me. And at the time, because I had traveled through many different time zones and had gone from the weather patterns that were, at that time I was living in New Mexico, to the jungle patterns, which are very hot and humid. Whenever I go through a weather change, I suffer from chronic sinus headaches. So I was getting headaches a lot of the time, and he could heal those by just doing the ceremony with me. And he would heal them in a very bizarre way. In fact, I can't imagine any Western doctor doing this. But one of the ways they do it is they spit on you. And another thing they do is that they actually apply their lips to whatever, like for example, if I have a headache, he would apply his lips to my head and actually apply suction with his mouth and suck the headache away. And one time he did this, in fact, the time I had a real splitting headache, it was gone and like that. I mean, he just sucked and gone. It was gone. It just vanished like real quickly.
Well, there's a real intimate quality to this work. It's very carnal in a sense, isn't it?
It's meat. It's very meat all the way. It's definitely carnal. It's definitely moist. It's earthy. It's feminine. It's hands-on stuff. It's very mothering, a very loving kind of energy. And for me to experience not only the shamans but also the Amazon jungle and the Amazon River, it was all a nurturing thing. The jungle is like some, I mean, you have a feeling about the jungle, and I remember my feelings. You can't quite love it, and you can't hate it either, because it's so powerful, and yet it's fragile. It can be wiped out very easily. Just cut down a few trees, and it can turn into a desert. So it's both fragile and powerful at the same time, and all life grows there. It's like a womb. It's very alive. It's verdant. I was amazed at the different sounds of life that I could hear as I would fall asleep in my jungle hut. It was an incredible, enriching experience. And the shamans come from that particular tradition. And the Peruvian shamans heal according to the environment they're in. If you go to other parts of the world, maybe drier parts of the world, there's a different shamanic tradition. I would even suggest that the ancient tribal people of Israel, the Israeli tribes, were shamanic. And they probably used desert rituals, which were very different, say, for example, than the rituals of the jungle.
And many of our modern religions have developed mystical, magical practices based on the original cultures from whence they came.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing that two Anglo-Saxon shamans taught me when I had visited them. A very bizarre thing happened to me. One of my friends, who you probably know, Ralph Blum, you probably had him on your show.
Sure.
Ralph, just before I was going to Mexico to do some, to live there and do some work on my book, Parallel Universes, I was very concerned about getting into that magical religious world, and I was a little bit frightened of it. I was actually a little afraid of Mexico. And so I asked Ralph, well, what can I use to protect me? And he said, here, take this. And he gave me a crystal with a rune on it, a rune character. And I put it on my neck and I wore it, and I thought, oh, I'm protected. Ralph has protected me. So I get down to Mexico, and the night before we were leaving Mexico City to take the blue train into San Miguel de Allende, where we were going to live, I had, for some reason, I took the whole thing off and put it on the nightstand next to my bed. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard a large sound like, whoa, what was that? And it woke me up. And I kind of reasoned, well, my rune, my crystal must have fallen off the nightstand. So I didn't think anything else about it. The next morning, I got up, we were packing to get ready. I looked under the nightstand, not even remembering that it actually had fallen off. Couldn't find anything. I always check under beds, under nightstands, because I travel a lot, to see if I've left anything. I usually find something. There was nothing there. So we left, and we were on the train, and halfway there, and suddenly I realized I lost this thing.
Your protection. My
protection. I thought, my God, what's going on here? Well, 2 years later, I'm now with the Anglo-Saxon shamans, and I repeated the story to them. I said, what's that all about? Why did this thing sort of like pop and vanish? I mean,
it lost itself, in other words.
In a way. He says it was a good thing that happened. He says because this is a Norse symbol of magic, and Norse magic doesn't work in that part of the world. Things circulate differently there. And it was good for you that wasn't there. And in fact, they were talking about people who, misguided though they were taking crystals from different parts of other continents even, and implanting them around Stonehenge to enrich it in some way. Well, what's happened since then is rather remarkable. Stonehenge has now been screened by a great big fence, and people can't just walk into it anymore. The Druids can't even do their ceremonies there anymore. So it's like they've really changed the whole energy of that place.
Yeah.
So there's something to this. I mean, there's something to little things having some kind of resonant effect even in the ground. And crystals do vibrate, and it's very possible that there's some kind of vibrational entrainment that throws things off and makes people feel ill at ease when you have something like this going on.
Well, one of the other points you make is that shamans will do anything to affect your belief system, whatever they can do, because they need to work with that to, in the resonance. So in a way, it's kind of funny. It's like, how do you know that any of these principles are in any sense objective?
Yes. This was the most difficult thing I had to come to. First of all, let me address that point, and then I'll address the difficulty that I was having coming into the shamanic world in terms of my objectivity as a
We just
scientist.
have a couple minutes now.
Okay, but the first point is that shamans are like tricksters, and they will use conjuring magic to convince you that you need to change your ways in order for them to work with you. So if you're overlooking this and watching it, it looks, you know, you can say, well, this is an obvious trick. He's not really pulling something out of the guy's stomach. But it depends on, what's important is what does the person who's having this happen to him believe?
What do they believe? Sure.
And in terms of objectivity, in terms of my experience with the shamans,
if it's your stomach, you may feel...
You might fight differently.
Yeah.
But in terms of my own experience with them, I found there was no way I could look at these guys or examine them as Joe Friday, just collecting the facts, ma'am. I had to really get involved, and that meant I became a participant. In a way, I entered a quantum reality with them. There was no way I could just observe them without myself being observed by myself. And that is something that is magical and wonderful and taught me an awful lot about who I am and what my mythos is and what's running this being as it goes through the life process.
Well, there's so many levels of complexity. On the one hand, we have the mutual sharing of vibrations. On the other hand, we have, you know, the breaking down and creation of new structures of belief systems. And you just mentioned the whole notion of parallel universes, which is so important in shamanism.
Yes, the shamans are able to enter into other levels of reality which are parallel to our own. They can do parallel physical reality things. I don't and appear in different places at the same time. I mean, I didn't see this personally, but they told me they were able to do it. But they also are able to enter to the death realm, in which they can actually see living dead spirits coming alive.
Such a rich and deep topic, Fred, but our time has run out. Thanks so much for being with me, Fred Alan Wolf.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It was a real pleasure.
And thank you for being with us. We're back again with Fred Alan Wolf. Fred, as we closed the last sequence, you just started to talk about the fact that shamans work in the realm of the dead.
Yes.
I wonder if we could begin by exploring that further and how it pertains to the world of physics.
Yeah. Well, this was probably a major revelation that took place, and one which had an enormous meaning to me because of the loss of my son several years ago. I've lost both my parents, and now I've lost a son through death. And in all cases, I've, for some reason, been gifted with entering into certain dream states, lucid dream states, in which I've actually seen when my mother passed on, I actually saw her in a dream and we talked. And we had a long conversation. And she was as real to me as you are sitting here. And I asked her, I said, Mom, how does it feel to die? She says, I don't know, I've never died. and is like, whoa, what's that all about? It's like, what's going on? And when my son, Michael, passed on, when he was killed, he was struck by a drunken driver, it was a very shocking, nobody ever recovers from the loss of a child. But that experience was very shocking to me. And then I dreamt of Michael. And again, it was like he was right here next to me. And just to prove that he was right here next to me, I actually reached out and I grabbed his ankle. And I could feel his leg and the hairs on his leg. And it was solid. He was there. And I said, Michael, what's going on? And he said, Dad, it's just like you're talking about. It's a holographic universe. I'm not really dead. I'm in another part of the universe. I'm just, it's just going on. And then I had another dream of him in which I saw him very differently. We were in a car together, and I was sitting on the passenger side in the front seat, and he was sitting behind the driver in the rear seat. And I looked over at him to turn over to see what he was doing, and he was beginning to transform. There was a kind of a glowing field around him. And he was entering another phase of what I would call transformation or parallel world transformation. Yeah. So the death world for me is a world of it's not the end of anything. It's sort of a beginning of something. It's a new kind of experience for us, for all of us. And so that kind of reaffirmed my sense of purpose and my sense of myself. The shamans, for them, death, birth, it's like they're almost indifferent to it. I've never seen such an indifference. If they want to talk to people that are dead, they not only talk to them, they evoke them. They bring them into their world. If a number of powerful shamans sit together and work together, they can actually create the dead person, have conversations with the person, and not only will one shaman see them, but that spirit becomes objectively real for all of them. They all see the same person. Mm-hmm. All right, now, what has this got to do with physics? I mean, how can I possibly relate this to quantum physics? It really seemed to be a very difficult task. The only thing I could come up with, the only thing that I felt, and this was almost like grasping for straws, was the parallel universes model of quantum physics. The parallel universes model presently is a physical model. It talks about parallel physical realities. I believe it's the tip of the iceberg. Mm-hmm. I'm now going beyond physics. I believe that there are, or I sense, or I intuit from my dream experiences, from what the shamans do, that there are other realities which are parallel to this one, which lie more in the realm of mythos rather than in Kronos. Mm-hmm. They're outside of time rather than inside of time or part of time. And I believe that the spirit, which is in this body, is also present there. And that all that happens when you die is that your awareness of this body is gone. And so the body goes into decomposition, but the awareness in that realm increases. And it just becomes much, much larger. So suddenly you're seeing your whole life, your whole mythos. I began to look at a kind of a process. I said, what happens at the moment of death? What is going on there? Is there some physics for that? And so I began to inquire with the Druid. I had a Druid teacher, and he was the Pendragon of the Druid order, former Pendragon. And I asked him, well, what happens at death? How do you see it? He says, well, first of all, you see your life played back for you at least 7 times. And each time you see it at a different, I would say, level. The level could be, first of all, it could be just intellectual. You've just seen the facts of your life. Second level could be feeling or emotional. You actually see what feelings you're going through. The third level might be how other people were seeing you as this unfolds. And he says they usually go backwards in time. You see them going from the time you died to the time you were born at several different levels. So this is kind of a learning tool to see, well, what have you accomplished in this life? What are some of the things that you've done? How have they affected other people? What are the betrayals that you've had? What are the things that you know you, in your heart, you shouldn't have done, but you did anyway because you were greedy or you were insecure about something? So, all right, so now I said, all right, if that's true, then how in all heaven's name could this be explained? Was there anything in physics at all that talks about this? So the only thing I could think of, and I worked on this for a while, was the theory of relativity, Einstein. Mm-hmm. And I realized that Einsteinian relativity, time can be, a time experience can be very different depending on the observer. Massive objects, objects that have any mass at all, can move in such a way that the time interval that they spend can be anything, but it has to be always something. It never goes to zero. But if it's at the speed of light, the time interval that the object spends could be zero. If it goes faster than light, then things start to break loose. You can have things going backwards or forwards in time, the so-called tachyonic reality of quantum physics, I mean of relativistic physics. Then I realized, well, God, nothing massive can do this. So if there is a recall of time cycles over and over again, then what is going on? So I came to the insight that at the moment of death, the spirit or the soul moves faster than the speed of light. In other words, the soul physics is already faster than light.
Tachyonic,
so it's tachyonic
physics, to review the past life, to travel all the way back.
All the way to the beginnings and the ends of the universe. I mean, there's nothing forbidden in this game.
Yeah.
Space and time become highly relativized, and long distances become extremely short. Time intervals turn into space intervals. Things become topsy-turvy. So for a soul not used to this kind of thing, who hasn't been trained for the orientation, it can be very confusing, and it could be the desire to go into rebirth right away, which is a typical scenario. But I think that one is really experiencing a wide range of the whole universe and sees it from a very different perspective than we do.
This reminds me of a letter that Einstein is said to have sent to the wife of one of his colleagues after the colleague died, in which he told her, "Your husband and I are two of the few people who understand this, but time doesn't really exist in the sense of the flow of time. All time is now, so his whole life is still present in some sense."
Yes. Yes, to me that's a very important image that I think quantum physics points to. And quantum physics is a very bizarre business. We talk about time in quantum physics, but we don't speak about it the same way we speak about locations of objects in space. When we talk about locations of objects in time, it has a very different sense. Let me explain. When we speak about locations of objects in space, we're talking about things which are observable, measurable. Time is one of those elusive kinds of things that is never observable. There's no observational operation which measures time. When you look at your wrist and measure your clock ticking, what are you measuring? Well, you're actually measuring movement. You're not really measuring time at all. So there's no operational definition in quantum physics for time. So what is time in quantum physics? It's certainly present. We speak about things changing in time. Well, time is a kind of a yardstick, and it's not a yardstick in which real time is passing. It's a yardstick of possible time. So when we speak about time in quantum physics, we are on the edge of speaking about mythic time, mythos time, not time and not real time, but time of possibilities. In other words, we speak about how things can possibly change in time, but not how things are actually changing in time, because the time element is not really present.
You're giving me the sense that all of our science, all of our quantum physics is like this little ball that exists in this much larger realm of mythos, and what you're doing is sort of punching through the walls somehow and getting out into that larger world and then looking back at science.
Exactly. Quantum physics is a very small stepping stone in a huge pond. And where the next stepping stone is, well, there's water in between. I mean, I don't know where it is. So all I have to do is jump out into other ways of experiencing the world, and then see if I can look back to where I came from and see if there's a tie-in or a relationship. And that's what I always will be doing. I mean, I'm not just interested in staying on the same stone and looking around. I really want to get to another stone in the pond and see if I can look back to what quantum physics is saying and see, well, God, it's a part of the truth, but it ain't the whole truth. We're still missing something. And that, I think, is what I'm here to do. That's my job. That's my role.
Well, you know what's coming to me, Fred? I want to say to you, you're weird, and I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Yes. Well, I don't really see myself as being weird. I see myself as being human. very much a human being.
Yeah.
I think I feel more of myself as a human being now than I ever have felt being a student, growing up, whatever. I finally sense myself as part of humanity. And that's something I never had before. I always saw myself as above it somehow, or superior to it in some way because of my intellect. Now I don't feel that way. Now I see that there are other ways of seeing things that are very enriching to my life. And when, even when I hang out with people or friends or whatever and share this with other people, it seems to enrich their lives too. And for me, that's very, very important. I would say that I would say that rather than weird, I would say I'm alive.
Let's talk a little bit about the origin of the word weird and how it affects magic and shamanism.
Well, I see now what you're coming to. You snuck one in on me, Jeffrey. Yes, you can call me weird if you will, if we spell it W-Y-R-D rather than W-E-I-R-D. In that sense, I would agree with you. I am of the Weirdian way. The way of weird is a way of seeing, a way of being that first came into being during the time that Anglo-Saxon shamanhood and so-called witchcraft was going on in probably the primeval forests of Germany, the great forests which existed between the Rhine River and all the way into Poland. There were tribes living in there, Germanic tribes. And then later on in Great Britain, of course, there was the Anglo-Saxon part of all of that. The way of weird was that it developed out of those tribal situations. They saw the whole universe as a gigantic spider's web, the web of weird, or the Weirdian web. And weird did not mean strange to them, it meant life. I mean, in a way I was, without actually realizing what you were getting to, I was saying actually what...
Fully human.
Meant. Fully human.
Yeah.
Yes, if you were weird, you were practicing humanity. You were really into nature, you were into animals, you respected all life, you respected the plants, you could listen and talk to animals and plants, and you would have direct communication. You also were able to have healing powers, and this was the Weirdian way. A book called The Way of Weird by Brian Bates came out recently, and there's a new edition coming out with HarperCollins, I think, very soon, if it isn't out already. I was asked, very surprisingly, by HarperCollins to write the introduction to that book. It's a book that's already been out before, and I was kind of, pleased that I was even considered to write the foreword to the book, but I did, explaining again what weird was about and why it was very important.
Well, it's interesting how our culture has taken a word that has meant something wholesome and good and just right, as it should be, and then we turn it around completely. So it's weird, meaning strange, as it shouldn't be.
There's probably a reason for this. And I think the reason has to do with the Holy Roman Empire, or the Roman invasions of Europe and of Great Britain. If we use our historical imagination for a moment, we might picture it something like this. Here are these tribes, and they have their shamans, and they're practicing the Weirdian way. And their life is okay. They've got their fights and their struggles, and they have their survival problems, granted. And then the Romans come in and start conquering them one after another. What do the Romans use as their shaman? Who's the shaman that they can point to and say, our shaman's bigger than your shaman because we conquered you now. Now, who's our shaman? Well, it would be Jesus. They would
after they'd converted,
yes. So then they would say, okay, you've got to drop your ways and now follow this shaman, who's Jesus, and follow this way. And this way, by having all the tribes follow one shaman, you have a unification process going on. You're producing centralization. You're producing the state of Europe as it is today. And of course, then there's the squabbles which come up between the various churches, like, say, for example, the Church of England and the Catholic Church in Great Britain. So, I mean, I think this is part of our history. And what happens as a result is that anything that was good in the old ways had to be reversed. So what was weird became something that was bizarre or bad or witchy or black magic, and therefore it was then no, it was no longer condoned. It had to be chastised. It had to be put on the cross, so to speak. So I think that's what happened. So language changed, and weird changed. It became a different word.
It's similar, I think, to what we've seen in our own age, where young people now say bad is good.
Exactly. Exactly. This is very much it happens in black culture, for example, where a lot of the black culture has enriched our culture, the white culture, tremendously, because it's added new meanings to the words and has reversed some of our thinking about how a word should be used. And I think that's an encouraging sign.
Now, in your study of shamans, you've gotten quite involved in the use of ayahuasca and other potions for altering consciousness.
Bad boy.
I think it'd be worthwhile to talk about it.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that, and I think we probably need to talk about this drug problem that we have in the world today, or in America in particular. What is this all about? Why are we a drug society? And to us, to hide our head in the sand and say we're not is really ridiculous, because if you're using alcohol, caffeine, even chocolate, sugar, these have a drug-like effect on your psyche and on your spirit. So what is this all about, and why would I go into a situation where I'm taking a substance which is hallucinogenic, ayahuasca? Why would I do this? Well, first of all, if we look at the history of culture, we find that there was a benevolent use of substances for altering consciousness throughout all of history. I think Terence McKenna is a great expert about this and points out much better than I can the nature of this. And certainly it was used for gaining insights, for peering or seeing into the future. Even the ancient Pythia of Greece,
the Delphic Oracle,
would breathe in the fumes of the volcanic sulfur in order for her to gain vision and so forth. So we've been using substances for these purposes for a very, very long time. So it's not a surprise that we still have a remnant of that. Tobacco, for example. Tobacco has always been a holy herb, an herb that is used for healing, not for giving people cancer. So it's rather
by the native peoples who didn't smoke 4 packs a day.
No. Although my shaman in Peru smoked almost incessantly and doesn't show any signs of emphysema or any lung disease at all that I'm able to witness. So what is there about? Why are we? What's happening? Why are we? What's going on with our drug society today? And how does this relate to shamanhood? Well, what I see is that people in our culture aren't having a full experience of life. The sacred quality of their life has been cut out from under them. They are materialistically maybe better off than they ever have been, and that I would never doubt. But their spiritual quality is being sucked away, eked away, and I think that people take drugs primarily to get a spiritual awakening, something which takes them out of this hard material reality. I think that's the primary reason for it. In other words, it's because of some lack or loss or sense of loss that people take drugs. Ayahuasca can be, I guess, classified as a drug. However, it's not something you could ever do habitually. First of all, it's a poison and it's a purgative, which means it'll make you sick, it'll make you throw up. If you take too much of it, it might presumably even kill you. So I would say that it couldn't be used for recreational purposes. I couldn't even conceive of doing it. Something's very important about this thing about the drug experience. When even LSD first came out back in the 60s, I think it was Tim Leary who pointed out that to take LSD without the right environment and the proper supervision is like playing with a loaded gun. I mean, you have 1/3 of the equation. You're not playing with a full deck, and the experience isn't really something that is really worthwhile. In order to have a proper experience of other realities, one really needs supervision. One needs a guide. One needs the proper environment, and one needs the substance itself. So for me, going into the Peruvian jungle with shamans and taking ayahuasca, everything was there. I had the right environment, the jungle. I had the proper guides, the shamans themselves, who are very wise about the use of this substance. When I was in Lima, after my experiences, I went to visit a Dr. Sabisis, who is a neurosurgeon,
Yes.
and also an expert on the use of hallucinogenic substances. And I mean, this guy's a highly respected figure, and he talked willingly about his experimentation with drugs, because there's not so much of an odor of well, this guy's kooky because he did this stuff. He wanted to find out, just like I wanted to find out, what is this experience about? And he came to the conclusion that the shamans are able to use the substance to open up the unconscious mind in a way that is not possible without the substance. He says, of course, it's better not to use the substance if you can. But in our culture, the way culture is going on today, it's probably not possible. So in a certain sense, I'm not encouraging people to get into drugs, but I'm encouraging people to have a spiritual experience. I think there's a church today in maybe New Mexico.
The Native American
Native American Church,
yes.
which is allowed to use peyote as part of their rituals. The Huichol Indians also use it in their rituals. And somehow we're missing something. We need our spiritual heritage. We really need it. And the Native American people don't use any type of drugs that I know of, except maybe tobacco and other types of initiatory, sacrificial acts that they perform to get them into an altered state, like drumming, for example.
Well, there are many ways to alter consciousness,
Exactly.
and drugs are among the most powerful.
The most powerful. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's like putting a 5-year-old behind the wheels of a car, behind the wheel of a car, and turning the motor on and putting it in gear and letting the kid go. It has no meaning. It'd be the wrong thing to do. But under the, as I say, the right environment and proper supervision, it could transform people. There's one of my friends who's a doctor in Tarapoto, whose name is Jacques Mabi, has recently opened up a new clinic for the healing of drug addiction problems, including alcoholism, by using ayahuasca as the way to get the person to get in touch with their spiritual, with their spiritual self, with his or her spiritual self. And so, and there have been a number of scientific papers coming out of Peru on how this substance could be used as a way of getting out of it.
Could you amplify on that? Just how does the ayahuasca accomplish?
Well, its primary purpose is to unleash the unconscious mind, to allow the person to have an experience, a conscious experience of their own unconscious. Now, often
well, let me just stop you a second.
Sure.
I mean, a conscious experience
I know,
of
it
their
sounds
own
paradoxical.
unconscious. Well, it sounds important. That's
Yes.
why I wanted to
yes,
repeat
I'm,
it.
I'm going to try to see if I can amplify that a little bit, because it's a. Let me see if I can. There are several directions we can go with this, by the way. I can take you into the modern research on the unconscious, as, for example, Benjamin Libet at the University of California, San Francisco Medical School has performed. And maybe we could talk about that. But I'd rather take you into a model of this that Dr. Sabasis first gave me.
All right, and I'd like to hear more about your experiences.
And I'll tell you about my experiences, certainly. The model is something like this. You can think of your mind or your brain, your mind-brain, as a huge conglomeration of file cabinets in which there are files tucked neatly away. These would be your memories. You can think of your conscious mind or your consciousness as a kind of a searchlight. And the searchlight will look in the darkened room of your file cabinets to try to find a particular piece of information. This would be trying to remember something. Like if I asked you to remember what you ate yesterday in the afternoon. You probably don't remember right away, but you could start looking and try to find what that was. And maybe you'd remember it. Well, that would be like going into a particular file cabinet and pulling out a file and illuminating it. When you take a substance like ayahuasca, or when you go into a shamanic altered consciousness state, instead of using the searchlight, the whole room ignites and becomes a fire. So all the cabinets are going, it's sort of like a ghost movie. All the cabinet drawers are going bang, 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 back and forth, and all the files are jumping up and down. In other words, you're getting simultaneously an experience of everything that you would call your memories all at once. So many, 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 many images are coming together, enfolding, coming apart. Many voices can be heard. My experience of this, where there's several, in one experience I was flying as an eagle. In another experience I was undergoing a sacrificial rite on some Aztec altar. In another experience, totally non-visual, I split into three beings, three different voices, and they all were talking, not all at the same time. And I noticed that I could be the third being, who was the witness consciousness to all this, and listen to the other two having a conversation. At the same time, at any moment, I could go, like, just sort of like changing my view, and I could become any one of the three consciousnesses. And yet, from any perspective I took, the other two were unique and new to me. They weren't saying anything. They were really speaking to me. This is a kind of almost like a channeling experience, I would say. And I think channeling has something to do with something of this, of allowing yourself to break up at your component parts. So these are all experiences which are related to, I would say, the unconscious mind becoming ignited and showing itself to me. For example, I saw certain things about my behavioral patterns, how I've offended or hurt other people that I didn't want to admit to myself, betrayals that I've done to people, lies that I've told to other people and to myself, half-truths. And I heard this very clear voice saying, clean up your act, Fred. Clean up your act. You know, tell the truth. Be honest. Go with who and what you are. And take the consequences of what you do. Be responsible. Look at yourself. Constantly evaluate it. And admit when you're wrong. Don't hide behind any illusions of yourself. These voices were very strong, and they weren't moral voices. They weren't the voices of the father who says, you better mind your P's and Q's. They were the voices of a very benevolent spiritual presence. My older man, my elder self, the wise person inside of me who's lived my life and is coming back and saying, here is what is real for you. If you start following this path now, this kind of almost a path of righteous behavior, maybe the Buddhist path of the Eightfold Way, whatever it is, if you start following it and open up your heart, this will lead you. You'll never worry. You'll never fail. You'll always be on the right path.
And you think it's this awareness that could help somebody overcome an addiction?
Very much so, because addicts. I've had a number of experience with addictive personalities. First of all, my son, the one who was killed, was a drug addict, and so I learned a lot from him about the experience. I also went to Drug Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, or Narcotics Anonymous meetings with him and observed the group of people and how they were. And what I felt was a magnificent spiritual presence. I mean, there's almost a glow in the room. Here are these people, all walks of life. Some of them are derelict. And yet every one of them was willing to get up and say, hi, my name is Joe. I am a heroin addict. I've had a tough time this week. I really wanted to take heroin. And admitting, opening, telling, and some guys were rich, like bankers or who had drug problems, and they were talking from their hearts. And as a result, heart energy was filling the whole room. So it seems to me they were using the group energy as a way of uncovering their addictions and using that maybe as a kind of a crutch. The ayahuasca gives you a unique experience of yourself so that you're strengthened by it. In a certain sense, you start to walk through life treating every being you're with as if they were a member of Narcotics Anonymous. You talk to them as if they were your brothers or sisters. You have nothing to hide from them, nothing that you need to protect yourself from. You share yourself openly with them. In a way, that's what the shamanic experience is about. It's to allow you to be that way in the world.
And I guess when you're in the presence of a shaman or a powerful spiritual teacher, you have this sense that this person is looking right into your soul, so there's no point hiding.
They don't hide from you. That's the first thing. They have nothing to hide from you. they're so human, they're so real, that you immediately feel relaxed. You know you're not with someone who's pretending to be somebody else, and or has an image to live up to. They have no images to live up to. They're very humble beings, and it's their humility, their human, this human mothering quality that they have, that allows you to just relax and be nurtured by them, and it brings out in you the desire to nurture other people, to actually, you want to nurture, you want to smooth troubled waters. I mean, it's something in you that comes out of you. I don't know why it happens, but it just happens.
Well, it sounds, when I hear you speak, it sounds to me that like it's touched you in a really beautiful way, Fred.
Yeah, it's as I say, I'm a member of humanity finally. I mean, I feel like maybe I'm the first human on the planet. I don't know. I feel like I've arrived. I feel very much a part of what of life, and I'm very interested now in what life is all about in a way that I never.
Being a physicist didn't generate that feeling.
No, it didn't. It generated a feeling of the desire for the abstract. In a certain sense, it triggered me to get into the cabala and the mystical element of it, but I did so as an intellectual exercise. I never lived it. The living experience came years later, and I think the shamans were instrumental in transforming me.
Now, in your interaction with shamans, from time to time, you actually witnessed in their rituals things that, as I understand it, really defied your ability to understand in terms of conventional physics. And I wonder if you could talk about some of those experiences.
Well, almost everything I did with them came in some conflict with my understanding of certainly traditional physics or classical physics. Almost everything did. My splitting into three voices certainly had that quality to it. Well, here's one that just was mind-boggling to me. I'm with the Peruvian shamans. We're in the jungle. The shaman is chanting this sacred song, which in their language is called an Icaro, I-C-A-R-O, Icaro, and singing this song. And I'm started like getting woozy, and suddenly I close my eyes, and I'm in another world. The jungle has vanished. I'm standing before these gigantic white buildings that are pyramidal shaped, but they're apartment buildings. They're not like pyramids. People are living in them. And there's a black wrought iron grated fence in front of me, and there's a gate, and the gate's open, and in back of the gate, in front of the buildings, there's this huge, massive pool, and I'm seeing all this, and then these two characters start coming up this way from the right side of my visual field, and I look at them, and I've never seen anything like these people before. They're about 5 feet tall, they're brown-skinned, they are totally hairless and without any clothes, with two exceptions. They have a white wraparound like a skirt, and their hair is like porcupine quills poking up like this. And their features are aquiline, very sharp. They're walking like regal kings. I mean, I've never seen people move like this before. The grace of their movement was just, it was breathtaking. And as they were walking, they were going into the pool, and I was looking at them, and they saw me, and they beckoned me to follow. And as I started to move, everything got and all unwoven. Suddenly I hear the shamans chant, I'm back in the jungle again. So how can you reconcile that with physics? I mean, did I see a parallel universe? Was it a parallel reality? I don't know. I mean, maybe this is reconcilable, but I think the major thing that I couldn't reconcile with quantum physics, or any physics for that matter, is mythos. In mythos, we have everything is determined. Your whole life is a flow from beginning to middle to end. There's nothing that hasn't been written down. There's a purpose, there's a flow, there's an identity with your mythic self, the heroic images you have, as Joseph Campbell might point out. Now, this flow is very much constant, and it's determined. Quantum physics is indeterminate, uncertainty principle. How do I reconcile the indeterminism of the material universe with constant, smooth flow, everything flowing, a sense of absolute fate? And then the synchronicities of the experiences I had in the jungle, how if I try to change or alter my schedule, even by a minute or two, I would get gently pushed right back onto the direction I was intending to go in the first place, and nothing altered, nothing could change. It couldn't be reconciled. So later on I thought about it again. I said, well, maybe what we're seeing is another form of complementarity, to use Bohr's term, that there's not only a complementarity in the physical world between, say, wave and particle, or between position and momentum of a particle, but there's also a complementarity between Kronos and Mythos. They may be like two poles of a magnet. That, you know, the scientific world has tried to cut Mythos away, and all they've done is just cut away half the magnet and made it smaller and less powerful. But that Mythos is still there, still part of the show. And no matter how you try to cut the magnet in two, you still have a north and south pole. No matter how you try to get rid of spiritual feelings, mythic intuition, it always is present. So I think that maybe there's a higher level of complementarity, a higher principle involved. And in a certain sense, I was going back to Einstein's original vision. He said, God does not play dice with the universe. He's right when he's talking about the mythic universe. God does not play dice at all with the mythic universe. It's very clear. It's going. It's running. It's following its course. But he was totally wrong about the material universe. There, Heisenberg rules the show, not God. And it's a crap game from the word go. If you're in, and where your consciousness is affects this whole kind of thing. If you are worried about your material reality, then every little flip, every little sudden coming up of snake eyes when you're shooting for a number, or shooting 7, or whatever it is when you don't expect to get, oh, they're going to throw you, because you're playing on the side of the material world. But if you live in the mythic reality, if you keep your head in the mythic reality, then even though these quirks come up, they don't throw you. They're just part of the process of materiality. You need the uncertainty principle in order to have a material world, and that's just the price of it.
And the shamans manage to live in both of these worlds.
They walk their talk. They work in both worlds. They touch upon your mythic element. One of the experiences I had, one of the very first experiences I had using ayahuasca with the Peruvian shaman, is that I saw my mythic heroes. Now you might think, who would Fred Wolf's mythic heroes be? I mean, what kind of mythic heroes would I see? Did I see, I don't know, some Greek god on the mountain someplace? Was it Zeus? I mean, who was it? Nah. My mythic heroes were like Captain Marvel and Superman, and especially Billy Batson. Billy Batson, you know, he's got a gimpy leg. I mean, he has a crutch. I mean, here's a guy that really is, you know, suffering the throes of the physical world. And he says, you know, Shazam. And who initiates him but a wizard that initiates him into, if you say the magic word Shazam, and every letter, S-H-A-Z, Kabbalistically stands for some particular meaningful symbol, right? And you say this word, you will become Captain Marvel. A marvel. You'll become the marvel of humanity. You can even fly. It's a mythic realm. Well, all those images were flooding through my mind, and my 10-year-old childhood images, and I realized, I am Captain Marvel. I am Superman. I am Billy Batson. I am also the wizard. I mean, all those were images that were part of me, and they were what really rule my show. They keep me going. And when I lost sight of that, that's when I got in trouble. That's when I had a lot of that's when things weren't working for me as well. But as soon as I regained my mythic sense of myself, Billy Batson and Captain Marvel, and as silly as that may sound to our audience, to me they're very real. I began to sense who I was and what I was to do, and why I have the relationships I have with the loves of my life, why I choose certain kinds of relationships to go into. They're all part of my knight on the shining armor, rescuing the maiden in distress. It's all part of it. I mean, every part of it is now makes sense to me, and I see who I am.
Well, speaking of marvels, I wonder if you could tell the story of the shamanistic ritual that you participated in on the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota.
Yes, that was quite a story. I had gone. A friend of mine who was who's a part Oglala Sioux, who I met in New Mexico. His name is Ed McGaw. He's called Eagle Man. He wrote a book that came out recently with HarperCollins about shamanic rites called Mother Earth Spirituality, which I recommend to our viewers. Anyway, I had met him, and I said to him, geez, I'd love to be able to spend some time on the reservation and actually meet medicine people. Can you arrange this? Would you like to do this for me? And he said, not only that, he says, I will take you there. I will take you on a vision quest. I will do a sweat lodge with you, and I really want you to, you know, I told him what my purpose was and what I was trying to do in this book, and he says, this is a noble purpose. You know, I want to help you do this. So he brought me, and I met him in South Dakota in, I forgot what town in South Dakota, but anyway, we had met up, and then we went down into the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and we started looking for his friends who were shamans. And first we went to see Pete Ketches, who is a well-known shaman, and tribal shaman there, and he wouldn't talk to me. He said, you guys who write books are all alike, you're ripping us off. And that was it. That was it. He didn't want to share anything with me. And then I met Paul Little, who's a tribal elder and kind of a council member. And he then said, look, I'll find you a shaman. And so that morning, suddenly he drives up. I was staying on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. I was staying in the hospital on the reservation. And he drives up, and sitting next to him is this guy that looks to me like a drunk that just got pulled off of a dung pile. I mean, I couldn't believe this guy. In fact, my image of him was so strong that I actually smelled alcohol in his breath. Later on, I found out he doesn't drink. It was all an illusion. There was no alcohol in his breath at all. And he was acting the part of a drunk, which further reinforced my image of him.
He was a trickster.
Oh, he was the Hayuka. He was a trickster shaman. And I didn't know this, but he started pressing all my buttons. The first thing he does, he comes up to me and says, can you give me some money? I just met this guy. You know, I mean, I'm a Jewish tightwad, you know, I mean, not really, but I mean, I said, oh, you know, I mean, everybody comes up like a handout. I said, yeah, you know, I mean, you know how you feel when people come up for handouts. Sometimes it makes you nervous. You know, so I said, well, I gave him, you know, $5. I ended up giving him $50 over a period of time, but it's just that it really upset me.
Pushed your buttons.
He pushed my buttons, and he was doing it right from the word go. And then I invited him in, and we sat around. I made him some coffee, and then he wanted to go in the bathroom and shave. He wanted to use my razor, and I hate when people use my things. I mean, it just, all my buttons are being pushed constantly by this guy. So finally, he says, well, I'm going, and he starts telling me about his wife and how his kids were beating up on him, and what am I doing with this guy, you know? This is horrible. The guy just seemed a total ninny to me. I couldn't reconcile that he was real at all. And so as he's leaving, I thought, well, you know, he's leaving and he's going away, and then he tells me, oh, by the way, we're doing a ritual tonight. We're doing a Uipi ceremony for Paul Little, because Paul's been sick. Paul had actually had a stroke, and they wanted to do a healing ceremony for him. And so he said, we're doing that. And he starts to leave. Doesn't even invite me. I feel, my God, I've come all the way. I've spent a week on this reservation. I've gone through sweat lodges. I've done vision quests. I've enough owls are flying over my head. And nothing's happened. So finally I said, okay, would you please invite me? I would love to come, and can I please be a part of this? And he thought a while and kind of tossed his head around and said, okay, we'll be back for you at 7:30 this evening. That was it. That afternoon I drove out to Wounded Knee, if you ever go to Wounded Knee and read the inscriptions about what happened out there, it's the massacre at Wounded Knee that occurred. I was crying. I mean, it really upset me, because I realized that they're still living with the spirits of Wounded Knee. They're still there. They're still very much a part of the Sioux Nation. They're still very much a part of our culture, and they're affecting everything on the reservation. That whole thing has been affected by that one basic massacre. So I came back from that. 7:30, Paul Little drives up in his pickup truck. Sitting next to him is this guy wearing a natty sailor's cap, nice shirt, nice slacks. Who's this guy? I don't recognize him. Comes out of the car. It's the shaman. It's this guy.
Transformed.
Transformed. Not only that, he smells high of brute aftershave lotion. So I thought, my God, what a mistaken impression I had of him. But then he starts going into his act again. He says, we got to go in the hospital. I said, why? He says, I got to talk to this nurse. I want to get some money from her. Money. So, okay, into the hospital we go. He gets, the nurse isn't there, so he calls her on the phone, and this, and he's like disruptive. I mean, wherever he goes, there's like a whirlpool going around him. And the nurses are kind of, and one of the nurses comes up to me, who I'd met. Her name was Mary. She taps me on the shoulder. She says, you better watch out for him. Watch out? What do you mean watch out for him? Why? He said, he's drunk. And I go, whoa, he wasn't drunk. I knew then he wasn't drunk. But the impression, she could smell alcohol on him. It was brute. But the transformation of the brute from the, and the way he was looking, and his reputation conveyed to him drunk. So, anyway, I followed them out to this house, and the room is totally darkened. All the mirrors and windows are covered with black cloth so that no light can come in. And he opens up a little brown suitcase, and he starts taking things out of that suitcase that I couldn't imagine would fit into the suitcase. He took out a rug that must have been 8 by 10. How did he fold a rug into a suitcase? That case? That case wasn't that big. Then he takes out all these poles and these sticks and accoutrements and this and that. I mean,
tuba, right?
It looked. I felt like I was watching a magic show. I was watching a guy do his magic show, and suddenly he takes off his shirt. He's 67 years old. He's fit. I noticed that he had the cuts on his breasts, indicating that he had done the Sundance.
Yes.
Which means that he had things pulled in there and pulled on it so that they would actually pull on the skin and actually break the skin, eventually causing a lot of pain. Your breasts are very sensitive, even for men. And there were skin cuttings all over his arms of sacrifices. And sacrifices are very much an important part of the shamanic ritual as well. And he had gone through these sacrifices. And so then the lights go out, and by that time a singer, Marvin Red Elk, had come into the room and was chanting, playing this great big 18-inch drum and chanting with a wonderful melodic voice. It was enchanting. No substances were passed out, nothing like that. And then he warned me before he was going to turn out the lights. He said, by the way, he says, you're going to get scared. I want to prepare you for it. He says, so, you know, just be cool. And he had everybody take off their eyeglasses, and I thought, what am I take off my glasses for? You know, and jewelry and everything like that. And then the ceremony starts, and suddenly I'm seeing flashing lights all over the place, like fireflies going off. So what the hell is that? What is that? What is that? And there's no sound. I mean, like if it was some kind of striking mechanism making a glow, I would hear a brrrt or something like that. No, soundless. And the flashes were beep, 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 beep. In other words, it wasn't like one guy moving around doing it. I mean, it just seemed to be...
All over the room?
They were like all over different places of the room, as best as I can recall. They didn't seem to be coming from like only one corner or one space. So that was amazing to me. And then suddenly I'm sitting there, I had my legs apart, and suddenly a gourd strikes between my feet, and it's going... And it's glowing. It's glowing in the dark. And, you know, I mean, where did that come from? And I just jumped. And then I hear whoosh, 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 whoosh. Eagle feathers are going by. And then we start doing the ceremony, and every person in the room starts to talk about themselves in a very heartfelt manner, sharing their concerns, their beliefs, their trials, their confession. It was like a big confessional. And here I am with these people, and they're sharing their souls with me. I just met these people, but it was like my family. I mean, when people share their souls with you, you're part of the family. So I shared mine. I said what was concerning me. I talked openly as much as I could. And at the end of sharing, when people agree and vibrate with it, they go, ho. And that was a reinforcement of my acceptance in this group. And so this was how it went. The light show, flashing lights, eagle feathers, and people sharing deep felt concerns for what was going on. And then the lights come back on, the ceremony's over, and I look over at the shaman. He's got a big cut on his face. Where did he come from? How did he cut his face? And he starts to tell one of the people that were assisting him, he said, look, he forgot to put the raw meat, the raw liver in this pan, and the spirits got a little upset, so they got banged up. And then I looked at the whole altar that he had prepared. Things were scattered willy-nilly all over the place. I mean, it's like a whirlwind had come in. So, you know, we could say he did it. But it's very hard to understand how he could have been all over the place simultaneously like that. And the people are sitting in their chairs, and you can't, it's so dark in there, you can't see a thing. It's impossible to just move around. I mean, you'd really be tripping all over the place if you tried to move. So I don't know, you know, I can't, how that happened. I mean, I could probably try
What's
to
the physics explanation?
What's the physics? Couldn't find one.
That one really did mystify you.
That mystified me, yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, it touched your heart.
Yes, very much so. Mainly because of the sense of belonging that I felt. Later on, when I talked with the Chumash medicine people, and they were telling me about we people, we whites, we Americans, they said, look, you know, you guys still think of yourselves as Europeans. You're not Europeans anymore. Your parents' blood and bones are in the soil right now. That means you are now a Native American. We are Native Americans. We were born here. Our parents either are still living or our grandparents or whatever have died here and their bones are here. Once that's happened, we're part of the soil. We're connected to it. So we are now Native Americans. We are all truly Native American people. And I suddenly dawned on me, this guy's hitting on a truth that I, you know, again, had failed to recognize. I keep thinking, well, they're the real Native Americans, and I'm somehow this white bread that came over from God knows where, from Russia, whatever, and I'm really, you know, this or that. No, I'm an American. And I think they were saying that we need to establish our rituals, our respect of the land. You know, once our bones are in the land, we have to respect the land. We have to respect what's going on. I think that was part of a lesson that I think we need to learn.
So it sounds like the really most important lessons that you've gleaned from all of these adventures transcend anything that can be translated into physics.
I would say that they are beyond physics. They're beyond simple physical principles. Elements of quantum physics certainly filter through these experiences, but they would go beyond.
Except maybe at bottom there's this sense of quantum interconnectedness, with the oneness with them and the land and the people and you, in spite of your very different background, that they were able to touch you and accept you as one with them, and you got that.
Yeah, I definitely got that. I really felt that I belonged. There was this interconnectedness, and maybe that is a quantum interconnectedness. I certainly couldn't argue that. Or argue against it, that is.
Well, Fred Alan Wolf, what a pleasure to be with you again. And
thank you, Jeffrey.
To share these events that have touched you so deeply. And I have to say, having known you now for some time, really transformed you. It's quite evident. You're a different person in many ways as a result of these adventures.
Thanks.
And you're opening doors for many, many more people to enter into these realms that have often seemed so distant and forbidding. You're helping to bring the worlds of Mythos and Kronos, of the people of the land and the people of the city together.
Thanks. I hope so.
Thanks so much for being with me, Fred.
You're welcome.
And thank you for being with us.